It is time to describe the visions of users. To do so, we must identify real-life objects. A good suggestion is to pay attention to the nouns that users mention in their descriptions. For example, invoices, customers, products, and then represent them as GeneXus objects. GeneXus developers do not work designing tables, normalizing, or programming. Their work is a high-level activity that involves describing the user's reality. Then GeneXus analyzes the created objects and designs and defines a normalized database, creating the application programs for the chosen platform automatically. Let's suppose that the pharmacy that requests the application needs to register all the products it has for sale, storing for each of them its identifier code, name, sale price, and available stock. For that, we need a GeneXus object of transaction type, where each attribute or field corresponds to the information we want to record. Although it is possible to create and define the transaction manually, let's remember that GeneXus Next offers an artificial intelligence assistant to help us and simplify our task. We then go to the assistant section and tell it that we need to register products, each one with its identifier code, name, selling price, and available stock. In response, the assistant informs us that we need to create an object of transaction type with the above-mentioned attributes and asks if we wanted to proceed with its definition. We say yes, and the product transaction created. If we go to the structure section, we see the indicated attributes. A transaction is composed of different sectors, and it is in the structure where the attributes or fields that describe a real-life object are defined. Note that the first attribute is defined with a key icon. This is because in any transaction, an attribute or set of attributes must act as a unique identifier or primary key. The purpose of this concept is to uniquely identify a product. It means then that no end user of the application will be able to register two products with the same identifier value. In our example, the identifier attribute is the product code. It is important to mention that attribute names follow a naming convention that uses the transaction name as a prefix, followed by the concept to be represented. Thus, the assistant defined product ID, product name, product sale price, and product available stock. This naming convention makes it easier to understand an attribute name wherever it is and to know which object is being described. In addition, in each attribute is defined the type of data it can store, be it numeric, character, date, image, etc. Note that numeric data is defined with 10 digits and the name with a maximum length of 50 characters. Let's suppose that we want to modify this definition and indicate, for example, a maximum length of 30 characters. The pharmacy also requests that the prices be defined with a maximum length of 9 digits with 2 decimal places. However, as we may need to define more prices or quantities, when the pharmacy buys or sells products, it would be a good criterion to be able to make a generic definition for all prices. To achieve this, in the type column, we just add the name price, followed by the equal sign in front of the type of data we have selected. We can see that the attribute is defined as of price type. This definition of the price data type with 9 digits and 2 decimal places is called domain. Domains are generic definitions with the advantage that if at any time it is necessary to modify the prices, this change is made at the domain level, and all the attributes based on this domain will be updated. To see all the domains created in the knowledge base, we go to View, Domains. As we can see, GeneXus Next has created several domains automatically. When selecting any of them, the Properties window is updated, showing the properties that apply to that domain. From here, we can modify not only the data type, but also many other important properties. This Properties window will be updated every time we select another domain, object, attribute, control, etc., with the corresponding properties available for configuration in each case. Okay, let's go back to the transaction. From the definition of a transaction structure, GeneXus Next automatically designs its web interface or web layout. This web interface will allow users to add, update, and delete products at runtime. On the other hand, the source sector allows working with the transaction in text mode in such a way that the definitions made from the structure are reflected in the source and vice versa. Now, the pharmacy also asks to register the type of product associated with each product in order to know whether they are medicines, perfumes, beauty products, etc. We ask the assistant for help again and tell it that we need to create the type of product associated with each product. The answer is that in order to achieve this, it is suggested to create a new product type transaction with identifier and name and modify the product transaction to establish a relationship between both of them. Let's analyze this suggestion. Is it correct to define a new transaction to register the product types? Why is it not convenient to simply add a new product type attribute to the product transaction structure? The reason is that if users wanted to add two products of the same type, they would have to enter the same type twice, being very careful to enter it exactly the same. Later, they might need to search for all products of the same type, and that requires all types to be typed exactly the same. It seems more reasonable to enter the product types only once in one place and then assign the corresponding product type to each product. Our assistant's suggestion is correct, so we select yes, do it. And we see the new product type transaction created with the product type ID attribute as identifier and the product type name attribute. Let's look at the auto number property of the identifier attribute. It is set to true by default. This way, all the product types entered by the end user will be automatically numbered consecutively. As already mentioned, each transaction has its web interface automatically designed by GeneXus Next according to its structure. Here we see the product type interface. Now let's analyze the relationship defined between product and product type. If we pay attention to the assistant response, it informs us that it added in product a reference to product type through the product type ID attribute. Let's pay attention to these attributes. Product type ID is the primary key in product type. So, when a primary key is included in another transaction, GeneXus understands that this attribute has the role of foreign key there. Including the primary attribute of a transaction in another transaction allows relating both transactions. GeneXus establishes relationships through the attribute names. Therefore, if you find attributes with the same name in different transactions, assume that it refers to the same concept. What about the product type name attribute? It is also present in both transactions. However, it is not marked as an identifier in any of the defined transactions. Therefore, GeneXus will understand that it is a secondary attribute. As a result, product type name will be included in the product type physical table, but not in the product physical table. It is very important to be clear that talking about transaction is not the same as talking about physical table. A transaction is the GeneXus object that we create in the knowledge base to represent an object of reality. When considering its structure and the other transaction structures already defined in the knowledge base, GeneXus determines the physical tables to create in the database together with their corresponding attributes. When the end user executes the transaction product, they must enter for the product type ID attribute a value that already exists in the product type table, since product type ID is a foreign key in the product transaction. Otherwise, an error message will be displayed. If we enter a valid product type in value, the value of product type name will be obtained automatically and displayed on screen. In the next video, we will run the application for the first time.